Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to Season 6 of the One-on-One with John Evans podcast. If you work in TV news, you just have to get used to the fact that some people might not like you. They will call, they will email, and they'll tell you or tell your boss what they think you've done wrong. Well, what happened to former WECT anchor Michelle Lee recently goes way beyond that. You may remember Michelle and I used to co-anchor the 10 o'clock news here at WECT, and she now anchors for a TV station in St. Louis, close to where she grew up. On New Year's Day, Michelle did a story about traditional New Year's Day meals, why some families eat certain foods on New Year's Day to have good health or good fortune. And Michelle, being of Korean descent, shared that her family on New Year's Day eats dumplings. That led to an ugly, racist voicemail left by a viewer of the TV station, a voicemail that really hurt Michelle's feelings, a voicemail that she now calls a gift. Murrow and Emmy award-winning journalist, social media influencer, adoption advocate, wife, mom, former co-anchor of mine here at WECT, and most importantly, one of my favorite people on the face of the earth, Michelle Lee. Welcome to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast.
Oh my gosh, what a hype man you are. I love it. You're one of my favorite people. Your whole family is like are my favorite people. And also, I think the most important thing is that I was your co-anchor. Actually, I was like your little reporter the first go around.
We're going to talk about that, and that very first live shot we're going to talk about in a little while. 2022 sure has taken quite a turn for you, hasn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right out the gate. Yeah. It was weird, John. It was so weird because, that incident happened where a woman called in to complain about me being very Asian and needing to keep my Korean to myself. And, if a white anchor said that what foods they ate, they'd get fired, all this stuff. And then just having that turn into a viral situation has been insane. I mean, I've had calls and emails from literally all around the world. It doesn't even seem real. Like I'm living an out-of-body experience, to be honest.
Well, just to recap here, you're anchoring on New Year's Day. You do a story.
I'm mad about it.
Yeah,
it's the holiday.
You do a story about some of the traditional meals on New Year's Day that people eat, whether it's pork or whether it's green beans or whether it's in your case, you mentioned dumplings, and you talked about it, and then you just kind of as an aside talked about your tradition. And boy, what happened after that is just hard to believe.
Yeah, I think what? Okay, so going back to like that actual story, you know how those stories are. It's like 20 seconds. It was a full screen. It wasn't even like, this big story. And, it's like Americans eat, like what you said, like greens for, wealth or something, prosperity, Mm-hmm. And then I did actually talk to my producer and say, I'm just going to add this line. And she was like, yeah, that's great. And so it was just an ad-libbed line. It was intentional, but I just said, oh yeah. Or I said something like, I had dumplings, because that's what a lot of Korean people do. You know me, I'm adopted. So like the Korean culture that I incorporate in my life is very intentional for our family.
Yeah.
But and then also Korean people, by the way, they eat this thing called dakguk, which is like rice cakes and dumplings. So really dakguk is like the main feature. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to get my Korean card taken away. But I worked so hard for it. I'm going to get it taken away. But most of the time people do eat like, the dumplings with the rice cake. So anywho, so it was a nothing story. And actually I got a couple of emails, or not emails, but like posts on social media that were like, thank you for mentioning that. That was so cool. I heard that, my daughter's making that soup for the first time. It was just very subtle.
Right.
But then I got that voicemail.
And You know, those of us who have been in the business for a while, you have to grow a thick skin because especially now in social media, people are very quick to send something. I call it the enter muscles, where they think they're big and strong and they hit enter and they've done what they need to do. But this person, this woman, took the time to call your newsroom, and boy, the racist call that you got, number one, it broke my heart because I know how much you're trying to do your culture in your entire life. But I can't fathom what it was like for you to hear those words.
Yeah, you know what? You're right, John, especially about having a thick skin. And, you know, if you've been in the business for 10 minutes, you know, like, okay, people are not going to like a lot of things about me, and I'm not for everybody, you know, and you have to
all of us,
work
not
around
just you, but all
everybody.
of us. Yeah.
Right. So everybody knows, like, okay, this is just part of the business. You're in a public situation, so not saying you deserve certain criticisms, but you're going to get them, you know, and it can be everything, like everything, your voice, your hair, your whatever. I think for me, hearing that, it was like, wow, that is shocking, you know, because it was so, like, she was so confident about it,
right.
And it was so blatant. And when you say something, it's like, I don't know how to explain this. I think a lot of people can empathize, though, because they've probably been in a situation where you share something that's so, the word I'm looking for, crazy. You know, like you share something where you're like, God, that is so crazy.
Yeah.
And people might not believe you. You know, if I said, man, if I came home and I just said, man, some woman called me very Asian and told me to keep my Korean to myself, someone might go, are you sure she meant that like that? Or, you know, or did you hear her right? Are you sure? I could see that people have always been in a lot of people have been in a situation like that before, you know, where it's like so audacious. You just can't believe that is true. But when you actually heard it, that's when you go, oh, people actually believe that, and then say that, and then look up the station phone number and then call and leave a message.
Yeah.
You know, you can see that happening as a comment on Facebook or, you know, a tweet or something. Yeah. But if you're going to take the time to look up the phone number and make the effort to leave a message, you really wanted to be heard.
Take me through your thought process now. How long was it after the newscast that you actually heard the voicemail? And then I've heard in interviews you've done, you went home, you were very emotional about it, which I can understand. When did you decide, okay, I'm going to post this? Because we all have those, I'm going to send a return email back to this person and just rip them. But then we think about it and we're like, I'm not going to fuel the fire. But when did you decide that, all right, this is what I'm going to post and I'm going to let everybody know what was said to me?
Okay, so let me think. It was between the 6th and the 10th. So, you know, here in the Midwest, we have a 10, not an 11. So my assignment editor sent it to me kind of just like a what in the world thing. Can you believe this? And we are now on these systems where you just send it in an email. Like we're on I think it's called Ring Central or something. So we don't actually pick up the phone. I don't even know how to use my phone, by the way. They gave us instructions and I'm like, wait, I just can't pick it up and call. Anyway, so it's, you know, we're on this system. So it's, you know, saved in an email and sent to me. And I was actually leaving a video message for one of my friends. And I was playing it and it came over on my computer speakers and she was like, what? Like, she like messaged me right away. Like, what was that? Because as soon as I played it, I actually was like, oh, I got to go, and hung up my video message for her. And then she texted me back right away and was like, holy crap, I'm so sorry. So then I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do here. But I just played it and listened to myself playing it. And then I sat on it for a minute. I mean, more than a minute. I sat on it and then I was like, I think I'm going to post it. I think I'm going to post it on Instagram. So that's what I did. I posted it on Instagram because then you can do the captions. And it was just, I didn't say anything. I just listened to it.
Right. And I think personally, I don't want to get away, but I think that personally, that was the beauty of it. That was the beauty of that post, how you listened to it while she was speaking. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess you can't get in trouble if you're just listening. I mean, usually. So, but that wasn't even really, I mean, I don't know how it works. Like sometimes, you know how you think like the universe must have been guiding you some way because, you know, it wouldn't be unlike me to say something stupid, you know, back. And it wouldn't be unlike me. Just holding my tongue is kind of a weird thing in general. So, but I just posted it. And then about that time, we were close to the 10 o'clock newscast. And so I went out on set and I just was telling my friend and the meteorologist working that night, who co-anchors with me, his name's Jim Castillo. And I like started getting upset. And I didn't realize like how upsetting it was to me when I think I was just processing it is what I'm trying to say. You know, like, because at first you're shocked and then you're like processing it and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So I was emotional for that newscast, but I don't think anyone would have seen it. And then I went home and I was just kind of devastated. Like I just talked to Jim. I had already sent it to him, you know, so he was like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know, I don't know. And so it was really sad and heavy. And then I went to bed,
Sunday morning you get up. What was your first inclination that, this thing is taking a life of its own?
It's just my phone. I can't even imagine what people go through. You need a Sherpa when you get viral because my phone was just blowing up. All these notifications on Instagram and Twitter. And I was like, what is happening? And I looked at Jim, because Jim. I looked at Jim and I said, I think this is getting some traction. And Jim looked at me and he smirked, like he was like, okay, come on, like, who do you think you are? That kind of stuff, And so I was like, I'm serious. Anyway, he disappears, probably like, takes a shower, goes to the bathroom, whatever. He comes out, an hour, 2 hours later, I don't know, and comes to me and he's like, Michelle, Rex Chapman retweeted you.
Yeah.
And Rex is like Mr. Twitter.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and then he said, I think this is gonna get big. He's like, when Rex retweets it, it's gonna get big. So then I said, what? Anyway, and so that's how, and then it actually blew up even more.
Yeah.
And then it's just had a life of its own. So
my daughter Abby actually called me. We were at a friend's house next door on New Year's Day.
Oh my gosh.
And or on Sunday, that Sunday afternoon. Sheila and I had gone out for a bite to eat for lunch and we came back and Abby called me and said, Dad, Michelle Lee is trending on Twitter. And I was like, well, yeah, Michelle's trended before. She's done a lot of great social. She said, no, Dad, Michelle is trending on Twitter. So that's when I got on and I saw the hashtag Very Asian going on and it was like, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I wouldn't, you know what? It's terrifying. It's
really?
It's not like, there's a part of you, right, that probably thinks like, oh, it'd be so neat if I could get exposure to something or, because I posted it. I mean, I posted it with the intent of people seeing it. But you really think it's going to be like the same 150 people who comment on your stuff. You don't really think it's going to go out into the world.
Yeah.
So, so that's a lesson, like, oh yeah, people could really see this.
It happened to me. I trended the day I had the interview with President Trump at the airport here in Wilmington.
That's right. I saw that. Yes. Yeah.
And, you don't think, I got called every name in the book. I mean, for me, it was an unpleasant 48 hours.
Ugh.
For you, though, I mean, it just seemed like people wanted to reach out to you, give you a hug, pat you on the shoulder, and really say, hey, you're right, this person was in the wrong. And so you had to feel, I would imagine, the support of social media, because a lot of times when people are trending, it's not necessarily that way. But in your instance, it was. And that's what I think was so great about it.
It was great. But okay, so a couple things. you know how when when you have a big life event, like say a wedding, you invited all those people to your wedding.
Yeah.
But when they start showing up, you're like, oh my God, I didn't think you were going to come, like, or like, I can't believe all these people are here for us. That's what that kind of moment felt like, but like times a million.
Yeah.
And so that was just, it was humbling and overwhelming. And then you start getting terrified because you're like, oh my God, my boss, am I going to get fired?
That was my next question.
Yeah. And then you think like, how many times did I put my son out online? Um, then you start thinking like, did I ever say anything stupid 10 years ago that someone's going to find? I mean, that's not an invitation for someone to come find it, but I don't think I have. I can't think of anything that I've even said that's remotely like controversial, just because of, we have work accounts. I've only been online because of work. But you start thinking about all those things, or like, no one's a perfect person. So you're just thinking like, gosh, am I going to get canceled later for something that I don't even remember I did? Anyway, so it just becomes this terrifying kind of paralyzing thing. But at the same time, you're like humbled because it's a gift.
Yeah.
This woman, and I've said this, so it's probably an old to hear, but it really was a gift. And in some ways, I just felt like it was a win because I still don't know her name. I just know her voice. We have talked.
You have talked.
We've moved on without her. I'll tell you about that. No one got hurt. Like there are actually people who get hurt or killed or worse because of racism. I mean, or bigotry or hatred. And so to me, it's like it opened up an opportunity for people to clap back, but also to be proud of who they are. So we saw so many pictures and videos and people using the hashtag sharing what they did with their families or just solidarity posts. I mean, it was a real beautiful thing. And I think it opened up a conversation, and really she's the one who opened up that, not me. Yeah. She did it. So, yeah. I mean, maybe I'm giving her too much credit, but I mean, it was a moment that I think that we all won from.
Yeah. On Monday, and this is where I think you showed such grace when you went on the air and you shared your thoughts about everything that had happened since. And you talked about racism against Asian Americans. And you talked about, the quote you have here in your body has absorbed 42 years of racism, discrimination, and at times actual violence. How difficult was that? You've been on the air now 20 years. You've done social media stuff. You've gone live. But that 5 or 6 minutes, was it your toughest ever?
Yeah, it was taped because I didn't want to do it live. I taped it twice. I mean, just right after the other. And we used the second take because the first take, I really couldn't get through it. And then we taped it and then we did an animation and then I came out live. Okay. But I taped that commentary because I don't think I could have done it live. I really don't think I could have done it live. It was definitely the most difficult. And I wrote it. And then I asked my special projects producer, Sonia, to look at it. And also my director of content and my news director. So they all looked at it. And I just needed that support to make sure, like, does this make sense? And they didn't change anything. It was great. I just took out little lines for time, but they didn't mean anything. They were kind of throwaway lines that I had in there. So anyway, it was really tough, but because I felt so much support from my colleagues and my managers, even the corporate, like Tegna corporate, some people reached out to me, and I felt, I don't know, just like protected, I couldn't do any wrong if I came from an authentic place and one that wasn't damaging to somebody else. I wasn't out to get her or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think, when I talk about the grace part, you didn't blame. You talked about how this has affected you, and you called it a gift. Whereas a lot of other people would say, "Can you believe this lady?" I mean, you had, and I keep using the word grace, because I really think truly that's how you handled it. How did the hashtag Very Asian? Whose idea was that? I know she mentioned it and everything else, but how did that all kind of develop?
Well, I think I didn't post Very Asian. So a colleague of mine or I should say colleague of ours, she's her name's Gia Vang. She is the morning anchor at the NBC affiliate in Minneapolis. She retweeted me and she talked about Hmong food, and then she wrote hashtag Very Asian. And so I was like, that sounds like a t-shirt. And she was basically like on it, she'd called me like a few hours later that night, and she and her partner had come up with like 5 Very Asian like merchandise things, a website, because he's already in that space. So they are, and they're very artsy and awesome, and they did it. They were like, we worked on a couple of designs. Like she was like, "Can you do this? And what do you think of this?" And so I put my input in. So we were ready to go that night.
Wow.
But we also felt like we needed to make sure we had the support from our corporate. So we went to the lawyers, and all those things to make sure we could make a donation to AAJA. And we had to make sure that AAJA wanted our donation, and everyone was on board. So I think it took 2 days, and we got it on.
Well, and you know this now because I posted about it on Twitter that it was great the support you got. Sheila, my wife, and I.
Yeah, she's texted me. She texted me. We've been texting, yeah.
Yeah, we bought a hat and a T-shirt, and we want you to send them to somebody who you think would want to be in Very Asian, the movement that you've done. So we wanted to show the support above the social media post that I did. We wanted to make sure that you knew from here in Wilmington that you had the support from the Evans family.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. It's awesome.
The one thing I wanted you to talk to me about a little bit more is that, we've done stories about racist and attacks on Asian Americans, especially a lot of elder Asian Americans. We've done the stories, and a lot of it, since people called it the China virus when it first came out, a lot of it has kind of escalated since then. But I keep going back to the comment you made, that this body has absorbed 42 years of racism, discrimination, and at times actual violence. And to think some people lose their lives simply because a racist is annoyed they exist. How can you make someone like me, someone who has never experienced racism, someone who has never and can only understand maybe this much of what you're going through, how can you make someone like me better understand that? Can you put that into words? Because I want, not only do I want to support you and AAJA and Very Asian, but I want to better understand. And I want you, if you can put into words, to tell me what that's like.
Oh gosh. Well, John, first of all, you're already doing the work. You're talking to people. You work in a newsroom that is diverse. Your co-anchor has a diverse experience. Your wife, your children, they all have different experiences. It might not be an Asian experience, an Asian American experience, but I really believe this. And maybe this, sometimes I'm like, do I come off too soft? because I do believe that people want to do better and they want to learn, and I don't ever think that I have stopped learning. Like, I am always learning.
Right.
So, because I grew up in a white household, like my whole family is white, so the work that I've had to do for myself is actually like all learned, like no one was in my house saying like, you should do this, or, in our family, we do this. Like, no one was saying that to me. So, I'm just lucky that my parents were supportive of like me going to camps and stuff as a kid and all those things. But I think we do all experience some sort of ism, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other, or anything like that, but we can all have empathy because we have all experienced sexism or ageism or, I mean, there are so many other things.
Right.
So you don't have, just because like I'm married to a white guy doesn't mean that he doesn't experience things on his own. And it also doesn't mean that he can't have empathy, or be, I guess, like an anti-racist. I think reading material is really good. I mean, How to Be an Anti-Racist was a great book. If you don't have time for it, then listen to it in an audiobook, and you can be done with it in, I think, like 10 hours or something. It's a great book because even the author talks about how he had bias and racism towards his own people, and how we can all be racist or have racist acts, or racist thinking or follow racist policy.
Right.
And, I just want to do better for myself, but for my son. I think when you become a parent, you really start feeling things differently. Like me being a boy mom, I'm always like, oh my gosh, how am I going to instill confidence in my son so that he can go out into the world and do good, but also he needs to be a feminist. Also, he needs to be all these things,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that, you've got 2 daughters and you've got a wife, you've got a son, but, so I'm sure that you're like, my daughters can do everything that my son can do, and everyone has felt something. So taking that experience and having empathy for others, I think is a good start.
Cool.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I mean,
Okay.
and I've had this discussion with Fran that I want to do better, and I'm trying. In this day and age, I think you have to try to be better at so many different things. You mentioned your son. How is JJ? Is he understanding any of this?
Oh my gosh, no. But I do think that it's inspired me to be really conscious of what we are feeding him in his life. Like we do sort of speak basic Korean to him on occasion, but like I was thinking like, what? Now that we're in Missouri, he has no other females in his life who are Asian. So not that he needs to necessarily be only around Asian people, but his whole family's white except for me. So I'm thinking, oh gosh, I need to do better at finding resources and finding people in our lives who reflect our family. We don't have, our story is very different because I'm an adoptee. But I have friends, transracial adoptee friends, but it's COVID, so it's hard to get together. But I'm like, we need to do more things and have a family that reflects us because he's mixed race, so
Right.
it's important that he finds other mixed race children as well. And I say that just because with me being an adoptee growing up, it was always cool to hang out with other adoptees.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily cool for me to find another Korean kid. I mean, that was also cool, but it
Right.
was just the adoptee connection that I was like, oh, okay, we have very similar lives. So
I'm sure he's going to be very
yeah.
proud of Mom when he learns about the what she's created
Oh my
with
gosh.
this incident. You mentioned a while ago that you did talk to the woman who left the voicemail. In your original post, you said, "I wish I could have said," or something like that. I want to say something. Can you take me through? I don't want to get in where you don't want to be, but what was that conversation like?
It was good. It was also a little confusing. So I had called and left a message that night that we did the commentary and just said, no shame, I just want to talk to you and maybe have a conversation. So she called back, and I think the best way to describe it is it's complex. So she apologized. I believe she is sincere in her apology. And I think for me, I think the thing is, race is not going to get solved in one conversation. So we did promise that we would meet up one day when it's COVID safe. And I think that's a good start. And I actually gave her resources, if she wants to talk to other people about race, she certainly can. And she was receptive to it. I think for me, it was just, I don't believe her apology was hollow. I believe it was sincere and authentic, and I think she meant it. And I do think that there are probably other factors that are contributing to what she says that maybe I'm not comfortable sharing because she hasn't said anything to me. But there were just some things that didn't add up. And even when I asked her questions like, well, what did you exactly mean when you said, I'm just being very Asian or to keep my Korean to myself? And the answer she gave me also did not make any sense. Not that I have to make sense of what she's saying,
right?
But I was like, I don't know. So, and she also told me she has a history of saying some racist things. She said that she went viral once for saying something racist when President Obama was in office, and it went viral on Twitter. And I said, well, did we do a story on it? She said no. So I think that there's just some work that needs to be done. I'm not here to do all that work for her, but right. I think it just goes to show you that race and bigotry or all those things, ignorance, can be really complex. And ultimately, I said, well, she's sorry. I accepted, and we can move on without her. We can say that I don't have any beef with her, and I feel very, very strongly that because of how everything worked out, I don't want her to lose her livelihood. I don't want her to lose her job. I don't want her to, have some sort of mental stress over it, because we have turned it into something positive. And she has to do some work, and I'm sure I have to do some work. So we'll just kind of move forward from there.
Where do you want this to go? You've turned it into something positive. You and Gia have, turned it into something that will benefit AAJA. But where do you want this to go? Do you want it to stimulate conversations? Do you want people to have a better understanding of the racism and the attacks against Asian Americans? What would you like to see on the back end of this?
It's a really good question. I'm actually trying to figure that out now. When the hashtag really started taking off, I noticed a lot of people would say things like, I'm mixed Asian and I feel seen. Or I had messages from adoptees who said, thank you for speaking up. I felt like no one has ever said anything about me being an adoptee. Adoptees have struggled to find their voice in the AAPI community. I think people of mixed race have found it hard sometimes to be seen in the AAPI community as well. So to me, it was and then also I should say a lot of people responded with hashtags like openly Black or very Jewish, so I feel like there are a lot of people who connect with the idea of we should all really be working towards self-acceptance, self-love, because when we can love ourselves, we can love other people, really. If we carry around hate in our heart, we can't really love other people, so I'm thinking I would love for it to continue. To say that it's a movement is crazy to me, but I know other people have said that. So if it's a movement, I want to keep the momentum going. Yeah. But what does that look like? Yeah. Because so many of us don't just identify with one thing. I'm a journalist, I'm an adoptee, I'm, the mother of a mixed race child. There are all kinds of things, but I know that a lot of things in society still don't reflect my experience. It's really hard for me to find a children's book that speaks to JJ. Right. So, is there a place where, is it about curating content for people to feel self-validation? is it a foundation that raises money for X, Y, and Z causes? People are really convincing me that this could be a real thing. So, I'm just looking at it. I've had lots of conversations with people to see if this is really something. But
Yeah,
nonetheless, I hope people just use it as a way to feel good about themselves.
Well, I think it's helping at the grassroots level, just again from looking at the social media and the posts, but it can also help at the 10,000-foot level. I think that's what's the great thing about it, is that people can use it in whatever way they need it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the beauty of it. What's it like to be the story rather than write the story or cover the story? Because you've literally been everywhere. CNN, Today, Washington Post, New York Times, Ellen, for example.
It's uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable. But it's, if you are doing something for a higher purpose, then it doesn't feel as bad. But yeah, I have been humbled, and at the same time, I feel like, okay, I got to put my big girl pants on when I go on Ellen, like I got to use full sentences, and and remember what the message is, because the one thing that I don't want is that even though I am a human being and this is happening to me, it is not about me. And so I think that's when things get weird, is when people make it about themselves. Like, this happened to me. I've responded in a certain way. It spoke to people, but like, I'm not the movement, like people are excited to share their own stories and their own pride. So that's what, you have to remember. And then how do you help people feel good about themselves in a way that is meaningful and impactful? So, but it's horrible to be the story.
But was it?
You definitely have more empathy for people when they go viral, or.
But was it a little bit cool to be on Ellen though?
Yeah, it was. But I swear, I had a total out of body experience. Like, if you ask me what happened, I don't know. I have no idea. And when it comes out, or when people see it, I don't think I want to watch it. I don't want to. Just tell me, did I make a fool out of myself? And then I might watch it. I don't want to watch it.
You didn't get scared, did you? She didn't do anybody coming out of the box on you, did she?
No.
Okay.
She was really great. And it's funny because to see how the donuts get made, it's really interesting. Everyone was super great. She was fabulous. She only talked to me like during the commercial break, because she tapes like 2 shows a day. You just get thrown in a green room, and you're sitting there talking to the producer about what's going to happen, and you're not really retaining any of it because you're thinking like, okay, I'm nervous, and they really do try to prep you so that you have the right expectation when you go out. Like, these are the questions that she's going to ask. I'm sure she goes off tough with a lot of people, but like, if you're new to that space, it's like, here are the questions she's going to ask. These were the answers that we liked. You can say whatever is authentic, but just to give you an idea. And so you go out there, and then it happens just the way you kind of knew it was going to happen.
When did you want to become a journalist?
You know what? This is going to sound even more terrible, because I didn't know. Did you know? Always? I
knew that I wanted to talk for a living. I thought it was going to be radio because I loved music growing up. And my first job at 16 was at a radio station at home. And I really thought radio was going to be for me. And then I got an internship with a TV station and went in, hey, there's video too?
Yeah.
And I put the two together. That was in 1983. And, 49 years later, or 39 years later.
And you did sports first, right?
I did,
you do sports? Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember your resume tape. It was like a pizza box. Didn't you put your number on a pizza box or something? I can't remember. What was it? It was a great resume tape. It still
Yeah,
holds
it was the one
today.
where I pieced together John Evans is, and I edited all that together. Yeah.
Yeah.
John Evans is a great guy, and I hope somebody will give him a chance. I have it.
Yeah.
I have it posted somewhere. I still show it every once, so I'm pretty proud of it. That got me the job here in Wilmington. So
Yeah, it was. I mean, seriously, it still holds, but it's just funny because I just remember that.
what about you though? You went, Kansas Journalism School. What about it?
Well, it's like everything. I did not start in journalism. I started in strategic communications. So I thought maybe I would do PR, even though I really didn't know what PR was, or something in business. And then I remember it was my junior year. I was like planning my semester, and I was already in the journalism like umbrella, but again, not journalism. And there was a reporting 101 class, and I said, "Oh, I want to take that." But I thought to myself, what a waste of time, because I could never be. I mean, I really had a high regard for journalism, and I was like, I could never be a journalist because they must be so smart. you know. But I took the class and I loved it, and then took all the rest. But I even when I was applying for jobs, I did not believe that I could do the journalism that I'm doing now. So I actually had a big heart for producing, and that's what I studied when we could get on our track. So I did TV producing, and then sent out 2 tapes. I sent out producer tapes and reporter tapes. And I ended up being in Eric Olson's office in Wilmington. And he said, back then, gosh, it's so funny how they used to do things. He said, if you do a package today, then I'll hire you. And so I went out with Mike Pelzer, and we shot a story at a hospice. And I can still remember, because I was like trying to be all, really flowery with my writing. And I was like, the sounds of silence, like resonate in this hall. It was like so kind of cheesy, but he hired me, and that was my first job, where you were the main anchor with Tina Garrett.
And we've got to tell everybody about the first live shot. The very first live shot was with Ben and John David when they were both assistant district attorneys in New Hanover County. And
not fair. That is not. They are identical twins working on a murder case. It's like so serious, but I don't. What? Like, I'm sorry. They were identical twins working.
And you did the live shot, and then when you turned back around to the camera, you said, I'm Michelle Lee. Thank you.
Somewhere. Well, first of all, I remember I was really worried because it was a murder case. So it's like a very serious story,
Right.
And at the time, I remember they were like, okay, we're going to do a live interview. So I'm like, I'm wrapping my head around, like, I've never covered a murder case. Also, I don't know what happened in this murder case, except for someone obviously got murdered, because I had just gotten here. I mean, it's not funny, but it's, you're like, you just get thrown into these situations. And then it's like, and then we want you to do a live interview. Well, I've never done a live interview,
Right.
So it's like all these things. I was so stressed. And then the prosecutors end up being identical twins.
Right.
So it's like, I think I did, when I introed it, I said something stupid, because I remember I said, well, you're not seeing double. I'm like, why would you even say that? And then I forgot where I was, because there's a specific SIG out, and it's like reporting live in downtown Wilmington, probably like well, back then Michelle Sherwood, WWAY,
Oh, that's right. Michelle
News
Sherwood,
Channel 3. Yeah, and so I just didn't know where I was, didn't know what to say, and then I just stopped talking. I was like, thank you. you were like, you took it, it was fine. But I remember Billy Lewis was the photographer.
Yeah.
And I remember, you could see he's behind the lens, and
Yeah.
he actually went like this. He like moved his head to like be like, what did you just say? And then I made him drive me around so that I wouldn't have to come back into the newsroom And I remember, I think you were like, don't watch it. Terrible. Why do people do that to people? That was a bad idea.
What did you learn your first time here? Because you went from here to Springfield. We both worked over at the other station in town.
The other station, yeah.
And then you came back here. We co-anchored here at WECT. You went to Madison. You went to Seattle. Now you're back in St. Louis, near where you grew up. But what did you learn during that first stint here in Wilmington? It seemed to me like you really grew to love it, and then all of a sudden you just dove in with a knife and a fork and just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I think, well, you know how it is, like your first year out, it's like going to grad school or something. You know, you're getting all this experience and then seeing if you really like it. I loved Wilmington. There is no shortage of news in Wilmington. I always tell that to people, like, no, there's like a crazy amount of news. And it taught me a lot about just the business, and then whether or not you really wanted to be in it, because you have to have grit. I mean, there were times, remember over there, we would do like the 5, 6, and 11, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but I would come in and I would do something for the early shows. And then, so I would do a package for 5 and 6, and then I would turn around and have to do a new package for 11. So that is that's a lot of work. Plus, I was MMJing, shooting and editing my own stuff on the weekends. Yeah. And so you learn a lot about just do you have grit? Do you want to be in it? Because it's also a grind. And then can you think on the fly? Ethical decisions. Asking for help, I had to ask you for a lot of help, and Dina for a lot of help, and then just kind of committing to it, I think, so it taught me a lot about myself. And also, I was halfway around the country, so being away from friends and family and starting over, there's just a lot of pressure, I think, for the young journalists who are making those decisions on how bad do they want it, and how bad does it mean to them.
You were one of the first, and I have told a lot of people that you really kind of showed me the importance of social media.
What?
You were one of the first on the Google Plus Hangouts we did. You did a lot of, you were early on, you were one of the first to go on Twitter and Facebook. Was there a moment that signaled to you how much social media would impact the news industry? What turned you on to social media?
Well, so Google Plus was like, I was all about Google Plus when we were in Wilmington, and we did those hangouts and we were on YouTube. I thought it was so powerful that people could respond immediately, and then you can adjust, the way you ad lib or your stories or whatever. So, I mean, it was just powerful. It was really powerful. And I was really invigorated by it. By the time that we were anchoring together, I think I'd been in the business like 10 years or something, so it just felt like, oh my God, this is the new thing. And now I go back and forth. Like now I have really sharply, I wouldn't say cut social media off by any means, but now it seems like less spontaneous. Even though what happened to me was spontaneous, don't you feel like more protective over social media now? Because Google Plus is gone. I loved it, but not everyone did.
Yeah. But it's also it can also be a negative. When it first came out, it was a way to share things, but now it can be turned into. You talked earlier after this whole thing came up, or am I going to get canceled? All of that has come out of the way social media has changed everything. But you were early on with the importance of it, and I give you so much credit that you really, through the Google Plus, I would have never gotten into that, and Facebook Lives, had it not been for the ones we did out on the set, doing the 10 o'clock at Fox Wilmington.
That was awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I still love social media for its like positivity and its wholesomeness, and the immediacy of it. When there's something, if a hurricane's going on and you lose TV, at least you've got the signal to do, something online, right? So it's powerful. And I still think it can be wonderful, but it's like, as soon as you attach to one thing, for instance, Google Plus, then it goes away, because or it's like, or TikTok's for me. I just don't have that bandwidth to do all of those
Right.
things. So it gets kind of like, oh man, but it is powerful. And I do, wow, thanks for saying that. I loved our Google Plus Hangouts. I thought those were a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
they were fun, especially when family members from far away would get in for the first or second time.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
And
How,
I do think one thing it's just that I think people also need to see you or me or whoever in a real life way, because chances are you're not going to meet half the people,
right.
that are connecting with you on social media. And so they need to see that you're an authentic, real person who lives in the community that you're serving, rather than just a news anchor shouting down from a mountaintop, because
Yeah.
we're just people, and we're not rich. Well, you might be, you're probably rich. But you know what I mean? Like, we're just normal people who decided to commit to the community in this way. And
Yeah.
so,
I tell people God blessed me with a big mouth. I just had to learn to use it the right way. Uh,
yeah.
in your mind, how has the pandemic changed our
Ooh.
industry?
Like logistically, or just what do you,
In overall?
well, in many ways, I feel like it really highlighted the need for local news, right? Because you need to know what clinics are available and vaccine status and all those things, or what your school's doing. But at the same time, I think from a tech standpoint or from an industry standpoint, I feel like newsrooms are not what they used to be. Like, newsrooms should not be in an actual newsroom. Like, we can all do our work remotely. We can all still tell the same stories by not going into places that might be dangerous. We can do Zooms, we can do all sorts of things. The tools are there and the resources are there. We don't necessarily need to do the big production like we used to. But like, I'm usually remote 3 days a week now, which I kind of love. I also kind of hate, because
Yeah.
if my kiddo's home, then it's like it's really hard to juggle those two things. But I just think that it's amazing that we have all these tools to still tell the story without being in a place that would jeopardize our health.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
I sure miss those days when everybody was around and you could bounce a story idea off somebody, or
yeah,
Michelle, what does this sound like? How do
yeah,
you think this is? I think that, journalism, although I think Skype and Zoom have become accepted now, that you could do an interview like this. I would much rather have you right here in this digital studio going back and forth
oh yeah, yeah, I
than
agree with
or
that.
doing an interview. But I do miss the double anchors with Fran on a nightly basis,
What are you guys
because
doing? You're not anchoring together?
no, because of we were separated, but now because of the cases going up again, we have single anchor shows again, and you have to do it because of to be careful. But just those times when you could be around each other and lean over. Fran, what do you think of this story? Michelle, what do you think of this? The I always tell people, one of the reasons that I work so hard is because I wasn't as good a writer as Michelle Lee.
No.
I wasn't as good a tease writer as Frances Weller and Dina Garrett were. So I felt like I had to work more, but I felt like I got better working alongside you. I felt I got better working alongside Dina and a Fran, and I miss that.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, you're better because of the people around you. So, obviously I got so much better when I worked with you the first time and the second time. But it's yeah, I miss the collaboration when collaboration is there. A lot of times I think as a reporter or something, you're just given your assignment or you put your story and you're out the door. So yes, in some ways, definitely collaboration and the friendships. Like, my husband's at home all the time, and I get to go into a building every now and then and see people, and that does so much for your brain. It does so much for, like, your sanity. So I definitely think that is important, and I'm missing it. But I think that also I've discovered that I could, when I was 100%, I do like 50%. I do. We don't have to be in person 100% of the time. I like 50%. So yeah, I think that you're right. Collaboration is huge and is missing. and at the same time, the technology's there to get our work done. So there's got to be more of I think, of a balance. And I think managers and newsrooms or whoever need to work with people, see what they're comfortable with, what they want to do, what's going to work for their lives. I think that's the way to go forward. But I also think you and Fran could probably anchor together. You could just do different rooms in the newsroom.
Yeah. Well, we did that for a while. We split up. I was at at a debrief monitor, and Fran was at the big desk. But the experience of the viewer is a little disjointed that way.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to watch, and it's not easy to listen to sometimes, because you just don't have that natural. She's looking at me, I pick up when she stops, she picks up when I stop, the way we did it the same way. What about the next 10 years? How do you see this industry changing in the next 10 years? You're an influencer on social media. You're in a major market. You at a major television market. Where do you see local news in 10 years? I won't be in it, but you still will.
But you're not going to be in it?
Well, hey, I'm pushing 60 years old in 2022. I don't know if I'm going to be.
You'll be in
last
it
10 more
until
years.
you're like 85. I believe it. Okay, so it's a really good question. I have said, like, boy, I don't want to be in this in 20 more years. 10 years I plan on being in it, I think. In reality, I would love to be a journalist for the rest of my career. But I definitely think the industry is changing. But how many years have we been saying that? How many years have we said, oh, this business is in transition? I've probably heard that for 20 years. Like, transition already, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many things that I'm like, we should be doing X, Y, and Z, and we have a hard time doing it as an industry. There's a part of me that thinks, like, okay, local news won't go away. I really don't think that. But will the options get smaller? We've already seen that with ownership groups.
Yeah.
So I think OTT is really important. Some ownership groups do it better than others. No comment on those, unlike mine. But I definitely feel like the truth is I wouldn't have cable except for the fact that I just moved to St. Louis. So I've got, that cable for a year. And then we go back to cutting the cord. So where am I going to get my news? Right. And I think stations need to really think about digital components more and finding ways to, honestly, to make money off of it so that we can all do our jobs. But, some people said, well, don't you think it's going to be like newspapers where you used to have 3 newspapers in the city and now you only have 1? I mean, do you think that could be local news, like television news, where we only have 1 station? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know markets
where there's 1 station and then another company owns the other 2 stations. Mm-hmm. And so it has condensed, and I think it is changing. This has already taken up an hour of your valuable time, and I know you're the one person on this earth who has found a 25th and a 26th hour of the day for everything you do. We've kept in touch, but I really, truly have enjoyed this hour. And I've told you before, and I'll say it again, I'm really proud of the way that you've handled this. And I'm proud to call you a close friend through everything that you have gone through since January 1st of this year.
Thank you so much, John. You're my friend, but also my mentor. We just love you and love your family. So I miss you. And it's really great to catch up. I hope we catch up more often.
I would love to do that, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you being on the podcast. Give JJ a hug for me, and give the legendary Jim Van Dillen, your other half, a high five or something too, because you've got a beautiful family and you're doing great, great things on the air and off the air. Michelle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I want to thank Michelle Lee once again for sparing some of her valuable time and for the way she handled a very ugly situation with grace. You can follow Michelle and find out more about her at michellelee.com, and you spell her last name L-I. And you can also support the Very Asian Foundation that she has now founded. It is very-asian.com. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. If you like what we do, please tell a friend. Suggest that they follow the show too. And if you would, please leave us a rating or a review. The more feedback we have from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.